Right. You guys can continue. Sorry for the waking up.
You back on?
Back on.
Okay. And by the way, I see you've got somebody on there that was on a road that was discontinued years and years and years ago. And nobody ever notified the buyers when they put in the subdivision that there was no road going to the subdivision. And there's a road that goes almost to the subdivision, but there's one property in between that won't let them across. So there's a whole bunch of landlocked little parcels in the subdivision. That's another loss of access case. During a break, I was looking down through what I had suggested here. And if I can just kind of go down through this, and give us some ideas to work on. That law library research was fantastic. I'm still going through it. That's a real gold mine. And I'm wondering if we can ask the law library to research the terms discontinued road, abandoned road, closed road, common law abandonment, statutory abandonment.
I don't.
They're all in the paper I sent you.
Alright, they are.
Part of the challenge with this, and I think there is a way that they can look it up. Is sometimes it doesn't say discontinued road, it says discontinue the road, or the road was discontinued. So I think there's a way to look up the terms if they're close to each other in either order.
Yep.
So if they can do that.
Yeah, I
I
can.
listed out a whole series of terms there, also including the statute numbers, because there may be cases that refer to those.
Mhm.
So that would give us some stuff to wade through. I've been asking for years if we can ask the Maine Supreme Court for an opinion of the justices on how you reconcile Jordan versus Canton saying that a public way with no public maintenance will inevitably be destroyed, and Town of Fayette versus Mantor, which says that a public easement is a public road with no public maintenance. So you've got two opposing cases here, both being made by the Maine Supreme Court. And I've been working on a whole dissertation on why I don't think the court has actually addressed that. In the report that.
So is it that you want to know if the commission can ask the Supreme Court or the committee?
The commission can, or if the legislature has to ask that.
Okay, that's the
And I would love to be able to put in a brief on it if I can. I don't know if there's a way for me to do that.
I don't know either. I have to ask Vivian and see.
I think it has to be a solemn occasion to ask for an opinion of the justices, and I'm not sure.
Maybe if we present legislation, we can ask, because that's where I've seen it done before, is when the legislature was considering the bill and didn't know if it was constitutional or not. Then they asked the justices. So I said I would like to be able to write in on that. In the report that the commission put into the committee, one of the things I insisted that it be in there that we look at the constitutionality. And Jim kind of waffled on it and didn't really want to include it. And I finally convinced him at least put it in and say that I said so, and he did. But at the end, he said, so the question is this something that the Maine Supreme Court has already decided, or did they leave it for another day? And the last line of the Fayette versus Mantor decision says, so for these reasons, we have not looked at the constitutional question. I can't remember the exact wording, but it says that because they decided on other terms, they didn't need to address whether or not it was constitutional. So the answer is no, they have not looked at it yet. Let's see, there's a flaw in section 3028A. It seems to say that a town or county can decide whether or not to keep a public easement. And it doesn't say that they have to, if not keeping a public easement, would leave people landlocked. And that needs to be clarified. I know of a situation right now where there's a county road, not a townway, it's within another township, Kennebago Road in Lang Township. And there's a little piece of road that the county thought was discontinued, but it wasn't because the description was ambiguous. And so now someone has asked them to formally abandon that piece of road because that will leave a public easement. And what they have done is they've said that we will decide whether or not to keep a public easement. Well, if they don't, they're gonna leave people landlocked. So that needs to be clarified in 3028A to say that if it would leave people landlocked, they must keep public easement. Another problem with common law abandonment is that in order to establish a private easement by prescription, you have to use private property for 20 or more years with the acquiescence of the owner, but without their permission. And in order for a road to be abandoned by common law, it has to be not used for 20 years. But they're saying that use by the abutters doesn't count, and the abandonment doesn't happen until the end of the 20 years. So you could use it for the 20 years of abandonment, and at the end of it, you'll have to use it for another 20 years to establish an easement. So if they could say that use by the abutters for those 20 years of the abandonment establishes a private easement, I don't know if that's something that can be done, but that would be at least a partial solution. On roads discontinued before 1965, there was somebody that suggested to me that in most cases, the abutters continued to use the road anyway after it was discontinued. So by now, we're more than 20 years after 1965. By now, the abutters have established private prescriptive rights. I don't know if there's a way to assume that a prescriptive easement exists for the abutting landowners.
So you think that the language should be cleaned up?
Yeah, there's a lot of places where the language can be cleaned up on these things. Some other states do not consider it unconstitutional to retain a private easement for the landowners when discontinuing the road. Why do we? I don't know if it's because the other states took their roads in fee simple rather than as easements to begin with. Now there's a main law that says that when a town takes a road, they have to take it in fee simple. So going forward, we should avoid that problem, but it's going to take years for that to kick in. Prohibit winter closing of roads where there is a year-round resident. That would be a real easy fix to put into the law. Just clarify that, if there's somebody living on the road, I wouldn't say that if somebody moves in onto a road that's already been closed to winter maintenance, this is where a disclosure should tell them so that they know in advance. But I wouldn't say that a town has to start maintaining a road they haven't.
Either that or give the landowner that just moved in permission to go across that public road.
To maintain the road themselves, I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing, when we get down to liability. I had suggested limit the liability of the landowner who provides maintenance. Also allow use of unregistered, unexpected, uninsured maintenance vehicles. And maybe post the road to warn the public. Because in a lot of cases, people who are trying to maintain these roads, they use whatever they've got. And it's usually not a registered inspected motor vehicle. They have an old beat up Jeep that
Right, but
won't pass
if
inspection.
it's your land, you don't need to.
But the thing is, if
If you go on
if it's-
that.
if it's a
on the
public
road,
easement,
Yeah,
then you're supposed to have registration, inspection, and insurance.
no.
And there should be, some exception made for that if possible. And allow residents to plow a road that's closed to winter maintenance with no liability. And again, post the roads to warn the public. Another sign that I think would be really useful, which I've suggested to a number of people, and a few people have actually done it. You can go to one of these companies that will make signs for you to order. Put up a sign that says, warning, road not maintained for public use at public expense. And then below that, you say, damaging a public easement with a motor vehicle is a Class E crime. And you in fine print, you cite the statute that says that. And my thought is, if you at least warn people, hey, if you damage this road, you're going to be held accountable for it. Some people are going to say, maybe I better not, and they're going to turn around and go back.
Well, some of them are one and done. They're gonna go through and keep going and you're never gonna catch them.
Right.
That's the problem. And they're not gonna, The ones that do wrong are never gonna look at a sign and say, oh, I better not.
But there are some people who don't intend to do wrong, they don't intend to tear up the road, but they get in and they find out it's kind of muddy and, yeah, maybe we better not. So you might at least turn a few of them around. But I do agree with you. We had a perfect example of that years ago. We had a bad mud season, probably after one of the logging companies been in. And a friend of ours asked if we could house sit for them for the weekend. And we said, super, we'll go down, we'll live at your house for the weekend, we'll stay off the road, give it a chance to firm up. We got a torrential rain all day. And at the time I had one horse. And so we drove back in the evening to feed him. And our intent was we were going to park at the end of the road and walk in. And when we got there, we found that somebody had driven all the way in and turned around beyond our house where the road got really bad and drove all the way out in the same two ruts. And it channeled all the water straight down those two ruts for a quarter of a mile. There's no place the water could get out of the road. And it just kept increasing in volume all the way down the road. And when it hit the culvert at the entrance to the road, it blew the culvert out. We couldn't get within half a mile of our house. And it was one vehicle. But anyway, those are some ideas we could toss around.
Is your road a through road too?
Yep.
It is,
Well,
so it connects to
depends
another
on your
road on the other
definition of a
side.
through road. It used to be a through road. We maintain about half or three quarters of a mile on our end. There's a bunch of houses on the other end and they maintain their end. And there's about a half mile in the middle that nobody has maintained for who knows how long. And that part in places is pretty rough. It kind of looks like a dry brook bed. You can get through with a high clearance 4-wheel drive vehicle going downhill if the road is dry.
No, I was just curious because I was thinking, you put no through, but
We've tried posting it dead end and people ignore it.
I'm sure. I just, because it probably
matter of
showed the
fact,
through road.
I think the tractor trailer truck that tried to go through at 6 o'clock in the morning was probably the dead end sign was up.
I can't even imagine, like, I can't even sometimes get the oil truck to come down my road, like in the winter, like. And if it's mud season, they won't come down. They've already said it because they've gone off into the ditch and they're like, no.
Well, we've maintained our end of the road well enough that people think that it's a through road.
Our road is actually really nice, but they won't come down because we have a very steep hill to drive down and they're just like, no. So it works, I guess, in our favor, plus it's a private road, but I find it interesting that a tractor trailer would drive through your
A
dirt road.
GPS.
Yeah.
And
So
so people,
GPS hasn't discontinued that area in between, and so
I blame Google.
I tell people, do not believe your GPS.
I blame Google.
it's Google's fault.
Yeah,
It
Google's fault.
usually is.
We need to get them to start taking down all the roads in Maine, like only 95, that's the only road that exists.
I really apologize.
It's okay. All right. So do we want to continue the meeting? Do we want to reschedule for next week and dig more into it? What is the feeling? You ladies,
I'm unavailable next week.
okay, what about
Definitely.
the week after or whatever? I can send out.
Yep.
I don't know how much time you guys have devoted for today, so I don't want to, like, if you guys want to go another hour or something, or I don't know what time you guys plan on going to.
I will stay as long as anybody else is willing to.
I know you will.
I don't have any other commitments here this afternoon, so I'm not under a strict time constraints.
Kathy, when she comes back in again.
It feels like progress is very slow
Oh, extremely
with this
slow.
stuff.
My husband, after 52 years, is getting impatient. And I can't blame him. It's been a long haul.
Mm.
And yeah, it isn't easy. Things come and go. There are times when things are pretty good, and then there are times when it hits and you just say, I can't take this anymore.
I feel like we need to, I guess I should wait until Kathy comes back maybe, but
You can go ahead, I haven't recorded it and we can always just fill her in.
I feel like we need to come up with like 3 things that are like concrete
I think so too.
and manageable for the legislative committee to look at.
Like, what's the easy fruit to pull down that we can
Right.
get past now, and
If
that
we,
would alleviate some of these issues?
if we send them a list that's so long and
They'll
complicated,
get lost.
it'll get lost and they're not gonna do anything with it.
I think you're right. I think 3 is actually 3 to 5 actionable ideas
Mhm.
of things that would actually pass, but also give people relief.
Even if they're small things, you know, like
I
the
agree.
low hanging fruit.
How about, 4 small things and 1 big thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just throwing around ideas, but it just seems to me like we can't overload them.
I-
Cause it's so complicated that,
Well, hopefully too, just like between the MDOT stuff that's coming up now, thanks to Peter,
Mhm.
and the terms meeting that we'll have, which will hopefully clarify a lot of stuff, which will just make it easier for those people who haven't bought, or who have bought, be able to go into court and like fight their way out or whatever. You know, and then sounds like on the other side, we just need to figure out, I think access is the biggest
mm,
issue
Hmm.
and liability, because who wants to fix a road if you're liable for it?
Yeah.
And somebody's gonna get hurt, or they turn up your road and somebody comes back down and they,
Liability should be a fairly easy one because there's already limited landowner liability
Yeah.
for recreational users.
so that would be an easy one.
Yeah.
So we could do that one.
Mhm. And another easy fix would be, in the, abandonment 3028A, clarify that they cannot give up the public easement if it will leave anybody landlocked. That would be another easy one. Kathy, while you were gone, we were saying we should pick a small number of things to present to the legislature, because if we give them too many at once, they're not going to do it.
They can't.
And I suggested, Heather said maybe 3 to 5 things, and I said, how about 4 easy ones and 1 hard one?
Because they won't do the hard one, they'll do the 4 easy ones.
Mm.
Well,
We can always
Because
hope.
it's what can pass, see,
right,
if you present with too hard of a solution.
what is
Then
the hard
they
one though
won't-
that you wanted to put in there?
Well, of course, I would love to see them do the approaching the Maine Supreme Court to address the discrepancy between the cases.
Well, I'll ask
I don't-
Vivian about that and see
Yeah.
like who can who can.
I don't see that happening. to be
Getting
honest
that
with you.
done, but
I don't see that happening at all, because you know how many people you're dealing with, 151 on one and 35 on the other. They're never gonna come to a consensus about that.
to ask the Supreme Court for a decision on it.
And I think the standard for getting the Supreme Court to issue a decision is pretty high.
I think so, but I'm curious, I'm gonna
And
ask
see
Vivian,
what
I don't think it
Vivian-
hurts to
yeah.
ask and
Sure.
just see like what the procedure is. Because I don't think any of us know, so we can always ask, and
Yeah.
if they say no, they say no.
But it's getting
Yeah.
it passed, that's gonna be,
But I'm wondering if there's a way we can do it without involving the legislature to ask
if
that.
you could do anything without involving the legislature, the better.
The only way I think you could do that would be to have somebody file a lawsuit in that.
I wanna just ask Vivian,
Yeah.
that's something we should probably know as a commission, or Jim probably knows, they probably both know, so I'll just ask them and see.
So what's your 4 easy ones?
Okay, one of them we said was the limited liability for maintaining public easement.
Okay, I put that as,
or-
I
or
put that
road
as a
that's close-
priority.
Or a road that's closed to winter maintenance. And, clarifying in 3028A that they cannot give up the public easement if that would leave anybody landlocked.
Okay, what's that? Clarify 30,
3028A, 1023, of course,
and that's clarifying that.
to say that they cannot give up the public easement if it would leave anybody landlocked.
A lot of towns do that already. We did that in Winslow. We do not have landlocked property anymore.
Hmm.
And that, I think, is going across because people own a lot of land. So now it was like you could only build on part of your land and the other was landlocked. Now they unlocked it.
How did they do that?
Because you only were allowed, say you have 2 parcels of land, but you can only build on one.
Mhm.
Now you can build on 2. So you don't have landlocked.
I don't understand how they did that.
They did it.
But how, did they they write something into their zoning law? to
Yeah,
do that?
they did something on the town level. So used to be, you had all this land. You could only build one major building, primary, and a shed, say a little accessory building. They did away with that. So if you have the land with those two, say those two, I guess, parcels. So now you can subdivide your land and make it into two parcels, as long as you have, say, the 2 acres. In the roll, it's 2 acres. So if you have a parcel, but you had it as one piece of land. Now you can subdivide it. And you can build 2 buildings. Now you can build 2 houses. As long as you have the land, as long as you meet the requirements. And you have what's acceptable for a driveway, because there's a road that you have to, there's a road limitation that you have to have, and there's a driveway limitation. As long as you can meet that for those 2 parcels, then you have no landlocked land anymore.
But if you have a situation where, like the gentleman I mentioned that's online here, where there was a discontinued road. And then somebody put in a subdivision and they got an agreement from the person who owned most of the land out here to grant them an easement, but they didn't get the last person in. And that last person isn't part of the subdivision and he isn't part of this other piece here. He owns property on both sides of the road and he says, you can't cross my property. How can you unlandlock the people beyond his property? Yeah, see, that's where the problem
That's where
is.
the problem is, but what again, I shouldn't say because I'm not. But we handled that zoning wise and I was on the zoning board for 10 years, we handled that so that people that own that land, not on a discontinued road, because that's a whole new different scenario. But if they had enough land, they were only able to use one. Now they can subdivide and now they can use all their land.
That sounds like a different situation.
It is totally.
I think the town messed up in allowing the subdivision to go forward without them having all of the permits that they needed in place. I mean,
They
that's
based
a
it
big
on
town.
having a letter from the owner of most of the land saying, yes, you can use the roads.
Yeah, somebody didn't do the due diligence on
Yeah.
that, so that's
It's
a
the
whole other
town,
issue.
yeah, the town.
the town not
Blew
doing their
it,
due
yeah.
diligence.
Um,
But then, that's too bad.
mhm.
I don't know if you're ever gonna solve that one. Okay, so you're clarifying limited liability, like winter maintenance
The abandonment.
or
what was-
minimal. Okay, and the clarifying of the 3028A.
Mhm.
Um,
Another one that could stand being clarified is 3026A. I clarify it to show that it can be used for extinguishing a public easement. As well as a town way.
these are your easy ones?
I wish we had the statutes in front of us.
Next time I'll bring them. If you guys want, what we can also do is we can make the list adjourn. And because the law library had sent me a bunch of information, I can go through and pull those and send them to you. We can all review them and then get back together and talk. If that's what you guys want to do. Do you have the statutes?
Yeah, 3028A, yeah, I do.
3026A.
Or Roberta can just pull it out for us.
From her walking law library over
Yes.
there.
Oh, okay, I'm worried about losing my place. It's not that big of a deal, okay. So I have 3028A. And you're looking for 30. We have the abandoned roads too.
Is that subdivision still landlocked? Like, so, and there's no other way for them to get a road access in.
Nope.
So how are people getting to their houses then?
Well, they don't have houses because they haven't been able to build there because they can't get to their land.
Ah, okay, so they haven't
They-
built the houses yet, at least.
Right.
Oh, okay. I was like worried they were like a bunch of like 20 houses and they already able to
No,
get in.
there's, trying to think how many there are.
And the guy doesn't want to sell his property to get
Nope.
money and like move to Florida or something.
Nope.
Or further north. Maine.
The other end is, crosses the land trust or something like that. It's conservation land.
Oh, well, there,
And they have refused to grant access over there.
yeah, I don't.
But it'd be just along the edge where there's already an old road. It wouldn't be a huge expansion and it would give the fire access to the back of their property.
No, well, they're not, I'm concerned, no. Nope, I don't see that happening. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
So
Give them some money or another chunk of land to conserve, maybe that's the way to do it.
3026A
Yeah.
and 3028.
Okay,
Yeah, okay. Those are the two you want?
Yeah.
I have those.
okay.
Well, next time I'm just gonna ask you if you have stuff.
Yeah, you want 3032? I got them. Wow. This is from LD 1415. That was years ago. That was years ago. Yeah, I kept everything.
I've forgotten which one 1415 was.
I wish I could give you a date. I might be able to give you a date. Who knows? Oh, wait, here.
Anyway,
Yeah.
the things that could be tweaked in 3026A are to make sure that it's clear that it can be used to extinguish a public easement by getting the private landowners to grant each other private easements.
Oh, here we go.
But that makes sense to me in one respect.
Mhm.
So on everything you talked about today, you really didn't touch on damages as a priority or as what you want to present to the legislature.
Well,
right now-
I mean, like when a road is discontinued, paying damages for it.
Yeah.
The
Because that
problem
was a
is,
big thing for many years.
the problem is, so we'll say that because they're keeping a public easement, you haven't lost access and therefore they don't have to pay any damages.
Okay, that's all
Is
bad.
that the standard? If there's a public easement retained, they don't have to pay damage?
That's what a lot of towns think. They
You want
should
to
pay
make a
damages
copy?
because when you're no longer getting public maintenance and you
Trying to
have to
think of the
maintain it
closest-
yourselves, there's
I'm on the
a
seventh
reduction in the value of your land.
Yeah,
I can make copies, I'm trying to
Hmm.
think. I'll go ask her.
Yeah.
Because of things like that. You guys want copies?
Yeah, if it's
Oh, wow.
possible,
yeah. in both
just to
sides.
see what we're.
Is there any other,
Um,
any other?
Do you have anything else you want me to photocopy?
Yeah.
Cause I'll take it and photocopy it now for you.
Right at the moment, I guess not.
Alright. Let me go photocopy.
Kathy, did you have a time that you needed to adjourn by?
I have a son-in-law that has cancer and he
Oh.
just got diagnosed Monday.
Oh, no.
So, and my daughter had an interview and he's like, can you come stay with me? And I can't. And so he's just calling me to say his friend stayed with him while she was away and it's just crazy. And so he just called me back and wanted to know if I would take the kids again tonight because he's so worried. His 4-year-old is very reasonable. His 2-year-old scares him to death. And he hurts. He absolutely hurts and he doesn't want the little one hurting him and all, So that's what we're doing right now. He's 33 years old.
Oh,
So,
so sorry to hear that.
so I apologize for leaving, but when you call, it's like, what do what do you do? I can't, usually I can ignore him and feel okay about it, and I can't do that right now.
So do you need to leave soon?
He's okay right now. My daughter's on her way back home. She went to her interview, and then he asked her to pick something up at Walgreens for him, and she's on her way back. So he says, I have a little low and it's okay. So,
Okay.
and I'll get another call from hers about if I have the kids again tonight. So,
See, another thing in 3026A that could be tweaked is it says that the landowners have to be given a year in which to try to negotiate a shared private easement. And I know of at least one case where when the people went to the town and said, can we do this? They had already agreed between them to grant each other private easements. But because it was going to have to wait a year, the agreement kind of fell apart.
Why does it have to have that limitation about
I can see allowing them a year in which to do it,
to arbitrate?
but yeah. But
They came to
if
the
they settle,
conclusion.
if they settle it before the year, they should be able to just go ahead with it.
Nothing usually gets done in a year, and if they got it done in before a year's up.
Well, they've been mulling it over before they went to the town to ask them to discontinue the public easement.
Wow.
So I remembered, I scheduled this room to 4 o'clock. I don't think anybody's in here after us, but. Usually people don't have meetings at 4 o'clock.
They're smart anyway. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's usually they're leaving.
We can end again in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I can't wait till they update me to the
Mm.
pro. It's just-
Okay, so if you look at 3026A, it says discontinuance of town ways. And the first line says the municipality may terminate in whole or in part any interest held by it for highway purposes. And then the second line says municipality discontinuing a town way or public easement in this state must meet the following requirements. So it can be used for discontinuing public easements, but it's not real obvious. And if you go down through the rest of it, it's all instructions for how to discontinue a town way. And it doesn't really say much more about public easements. So I think that could be clarified with a little bit of work. And then if you go down near the bottom of the page B, after the 1-year waiting period required in paragraph A. So I see it that you have to wait for a year, even if people are ready before the year. I would say they have to be given up to a year, but if they can work it out before then, go for it. Then in 3028. Oh, that's 3028, not 3028A.
Okay.
Well,
And that was repealed, right? 3028.
yeah, and it was replaced by 3028A. And there are a couple of concerns I have about that. One being, as I said, that it sounds like a town or county can just give up the public easement, even if it leaves people landlocked. And that would be a pretty easy fix. I also would like to see people give them a little more time. And it doesn't say in the notice requirement that people have to be told how much time they have to appeal or how to go about appealing. So, putting in
No,
the
this is
appeal process would help.
They have to give 30 days notice prior to the meeting.
Mhm. But it doesn't say that the 30 days notice has to tell them how much time they have in which to ask for a hearing on it. And if they have 10 days in which to ask for a hearing, that's an awful short period of time if you have to get 25% of the landowners to agree to ask for it. Because in a lot of cases, some of these people live out of state.
Yeah.
Even finding them within 10 days can be a problem, let alone finding them, explaining to them what's going on and getting them to agree to ask for a hearing.
So you're thinking more time to request a public hearing?
Right. And I would like to see a smaller percentage. Because, for example, on our road, when we first were up against it, it was us and something like 20 other landowners, most of which were, well, all of which were woodlots at the time. And they didn't care. So getting 25% of them to sign on with us would have been impossible.
All right, and then, so we have, and then we have 30. What was the changes you wanted to make for 3026A? It was the discontinuance. You wanted to clarify. They can be used to also extinguish the town, like a public easement by granting they could grant a private easement as long as the private landowners wanted to grant it to each other.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what were your other two that you thought would be easy?
Let's see.
Yeah.
Do you have the limited landowner
Yes,
liability?
that is my,
Okay.
I have 1, 2, I'm on 3, I have 2 more left for 5.
Oh, do you have prohibit winter closing of roads where there's a year-round resident?
No, I can put that in.
Now that one,
I think they're gonna fight us on that one.
I thought they'd pass in a heartbeat.
Did you want to prohibit the closing of the road or to allow someone to be able to plow the road, even if it's a public easement and they're living on that road?
Either way would be better than what they've got now. Because right now they can effectively landlock a person for the winter.
Yeah, so they have to decide either way. Okay. And then what do you think would be your last one that you would want to see? That's easy.
Because there are all kinds of things that I would love to see them do.
Is there anyone that would help more with access? That would be an easy to let them into access? You know, that you guys can think of?
Safety, yeah.
Because I think Jim was saying something,
Did we put in minimum maintenance roads?
No.
or did not.
That'd be good.
I think you're gonna push, but we can put it in. Minimum maintenance roads, but I think also what Jim was saying, which I found intriguing, was he was saying that with some of the developments and stuff, if they do have a gate, they have to give the key to either the fire department or have it somewhere on a lockbox on the gate or something for people to get access further down the road.
That's still. You really, yeah, so you can bring safety up to the legislature, and I don't know of any party that would not think that's a good idea. Anything to do with safety. We've got tons of fire chiefs on this, on the legislature. We've got tons of people that actually know, they know how important safety is. That being said, I'd like to hear the argument about that's not being a good idea. That's one of the things you can get past. That I have no doubt, and that's okay.
What exactly are you thinking for safety?
So safety has to do with, again, your rescue, your fire trucks, and safety is also have to do with the elderly. They have to be able to get to their place. They can't walk in.
So are you saying a road should not be able to be obstructed?
A road should not be able to be obstructed. If they have to get out, sure, it's nice to say, we'll give you the key. They're still gonna have to get out in the middle of a snowstorm or a rainstorm and try and get that unlocked. You shouldn't be able to obstruct, period. You wanna own land, you wanna be that person, guess what? You're gonna get sued, and the town's gonna get sued when something goes wrong. Justifiably. to the pants off both of them. That landowner that's blocking your way and that town that let it happen. And I don't sue, I've never sued, but I'm telling you, if this was my loved one, in a heartbeat.